Does that work? Okay. Back in the day, this is called a Sharpie now, but back in the day we called them magic markers. Okay? And there's still a little magic left in this marker, because some one of you can come up here and take this marker and using 3 lines divide that circle into 8 pieces. Who wants to do it?
Go, Karen. Go, Karen. Yes, go.
3 lines, 8 pieces. Okay? 3 lines, 8 pieces. Anybody want to jump? You know, come on, come on.
I've been doing a lot of third grade.
We're not,
She's got third graders. Yeah.
Okay. No takers? Adrian's got it all figured out. He's just too bashful to come up.
Come on, Adrian.
Okay. You want me to give it to you? For the sake of time, I'll give it to you. You ready?
Okay.
You ready? All right. Magic marker. Line number 1, line number 2, line number 3.
It's not
Okay.
technically a line.
No, this is an experiment in what I said versus what you heard. You heard 3 straight lines and you heard 8 equal pieces. I didn't say that. I said 3 lines.
Geometry sets.
Okay. But this here again, it's an exercise in what I said versus what you heard. Okay? All right, now, I'll give you another one here right quick. Is this year an Olympic year?
It was.
It was, okay, but it got postponed. Now, what do they use to denote the very series of Olympic Games? What are those called?
5 rings.
Hmm?
5
The
rings.
numbers. You know, what numbers do they use? Roman numerals. All right, so everybody recognizes what this is, okay? Right? All right, use the same magic marker, add 1 line and make that a 6. Somebody come up. You move 1 line, add 1 line and make that a 6. Make that a 6. You got it?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Same theory as what you did on last
All
one.
right. You ready? You want to see it?
I've got 1 left.
That's another experiment, okay? That's another experiment. But what you got here is the power of persuasion. I set you up, and when I asked the question, you were thinking Roman numerals. And when I did that, I nailed 7 brains to the floor. And I'm going to let you up. But you have to get outside of your boundaries, particularly as business owners, get outside your boundaries and think creatively about the things that we're faced with today. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, Alicia's going to start us off and leading the conversation there. And our job is to facilitate the transfer of knowledge and nuggets to you. Your job is to sit there and absorb the nuggets and learn something. If you get finished before we do, please just sit quietly for a little while and we'll be finished by 1 o'clock. Okay? All right.
Before you do that, let's kind of just quickly go around the room for a minute, because she had the answer. See the target on her shirt? She's got it. So just a moment, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Maggie Jeffers. I work for Defender Firearms and Training. I'm the Director of Operations, and I'm also a firearms instructor.
Very good, thank you. Sarah?
Hello, I'm Sarah Bailey. I have my own coaching business, so I do executive training and development.
Adrian Pelkis, I'm an artificer. It's a term for a professional inventor. And I've also joined the baton. We've started a group here in South Carolina called South Carolina Inventors Forum to help motivate people to get their creative side going and do something with it that'll start a business. And
Angela Board with the Lexington Chamber. I know all of y'all. I'm Carrie Ross with Co-Create Lexington.
And you're located where?
I am now located on River Chase Way, which is the frontage road that goes right off of Clay Mill at I-20 and 378, just past the dump of Libby's State Road.
Oh, okay.
Everybody knows where one of the 2 of those things are.
And you know, your old sign is still up there.
That's fine,
It
they
is.
can.
Isn't that great? So that's cool. I mean, you got advertised on both sides of town. Good.
I'm Colleen, I'm an illustrator, and I own Light Illustrates. And I help small businesses and self-publishers with their creative needs.
Good. Illustrators are hard to find, so welcome. Contact her.
Kathy Shoy, physical therapist and owner of Renew Physical Therapy and Wellness. It's a concierge practice providing physical therapy and wellness services such as fitness classes, consultations, etc.
Very good. And since we have an intimate group, we've got to just enjoy this
Yes.
situation. So.
All right, this is not a one-way, these are not one-way conversations, so anytime you have a question or something, raise your hand, stop us,
Jump
all
in.
right, and go forward.
We got plenty of
However,
time.
we are both tangential thinkers, and if we go off on a tangent, your responsibility is to reel us back in and bring us back to the
And
table.
I'll do the same with you, Tom.
Okay,
Okay, so, oh, you want me to, okay.
Okay.
So we like to start off with a story. And you're driving.
okay,
I'd like to start off with a story about once upon a time. And actually, it wasn't too terribly long ago, but once upon a time, employers actually followed the directions of their managers or their leaders, and they had this face-to-face time together. And also, employees really like to work 9 to 5. Actually, there are some employees even come in at 7:45 and work till 5:15 because they really want to show their employer that they're ready to work, and also they are there to help a client after hours as needed. And also part of this story is that, turnover could be managed. It was reasonable, and you looked at your turnover numbers and you tweaked things a little bit differently each time you did it, so that you could be better next time. People worried about advancement. They wanted to advance their careers and do career development and really advance themselves in organizations. Employees really love going to a place to work. I know as a corporate person myself, I love going to my corporation every morning and driving in and getting ready. So that's how it was pretty much. And we've got one more.
these are just some pieces of the fairy tale. How much fairy tale have I left out? Okay, what else is in the fairy tale?
Security.
Once upon a time, security, like what?
Retirement funds.
401ks.
Retirement
all those
funds,
things.
oh yeah, okay. Now, our government would never lie to us, federal government would never lie to us, okay? But that's one of the fields that the government told us when you and I were young, right? That we didn't even worry about retirement because Social Security was gonna take care of us, right? That's what they told us, right? So, I think they're gonna take care of us. I think Social Security will take care of us. Not gonna be anything left for anybody else, but I think they're gonna take, you guys, I'm sorry, you're out of trouble, you're just out of luck.
She's a Gen X, you're a Gen X. Yeah.
Okay.
The millennials are in trouble. But
And the last one here, and I saved this bullet for last, was employees spent careers with one employer. Okay?
I did go to a funeral on Monday that the gentleman had been there for 42 years with one of the Marvell companies. But, that's just not happening.
Well,
In fact, the younger generations are 7 or 8 careers alone.
we look at ourselves today and we look at why we're here. Okay? We look at the why. Okay? And you ask yourself these questions, you can ask your employees these questions. Are you happy where you are? Are you happy where you find yourself right now in your career? Okay? If so, why? If not, what are you going to do about it? Right? Because none of this rolls uphill or downhill, it rolls on you. I mean, these become, you have to shoulder the responsibilities. Is it time to change your life and career? Is it time to do that? A lot of folks right now, for the last 4 or 5 months, especially organizationally, they've dug themselves a foxhole, they climbed into that hole, and they pulled the lid over. It says, I'll come back when everything gets back to normal. Well, this is one of those events in our lifetime that I don't think is going to go back to normal. And I mean, we use the phrase new normal, but I don't get hung up on new normal, okay?
Same thing, and also the whole thing about, what parts are you going to then change for yourself, or are you actually willing to make the change? Are you willing to kind of do these different things we have to do? Sarah and myself as facilitators, or Tom too, it's all a virtual world. And when you do get to have an opportunity like this is fabulous because we're face to face with someone. but that's a whole change. And what significant changes are you gonna do as part of your business, or if you're embarking on a new business, before, to change things around that's gonna make an impact to your audience, or is your audience changing? You've gotta do a whole new audience change. The same quiz for the moment. Look at it for a second and kind of give me some of your scales that you came up with, just for the fun of it.
No.
So, how happy are you?
I'm very happy.
Is that five?
Give me a number.
There's 2 5s, there's 2 5s.
2 5s, you got 3 5s?
3 5s.
3 5s? Great.
3, 4, 3, 4, 5, you know.
3-ish.
3-ish. Okay, so you got right in the middle somewhere.
Right.
Huh? Good. Well, you're still getting married soon, aren't you?
Yes.
So she's very happy. Okay.
We will have a wedding one day.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Post-COVID.
One
So
day. One day.
what is
Okay.
this happiness thing or not right
Just the uncertainty. right now.
Uncertainty. Okay.
And I like being in control, and I can't control right now, and it's making me.
Okay, all right. So that downgrades it a little bit. You like to be in control.
Yeah.
As a small business owner, you know, one off, I think you'd like to be in control. You know,
Exactly.
of what you're doing. Okay, what else?
I love people.
Uh-huh.
And I left a corporate job and ended up becoming a caregiver for a wounded warrior. And when I came back after all of that, there was not a corporate job for me to go to because I didn't have current experience. So I
That's a
still
vicious circle.
kept caregiving and was completely miserable. And one day I just walked into Defender and took some classes, and the next thing I know, he says, "Have you ever thought about being an instructor?" So here I am.
There you go.
So-
Very good. Excellent. Okay, so is it the right time for you to make changes in your, where are you on the happiness scale, by the way?
The first question.
First question, are you happy with
Yeah.
what? Where are you? Okay. That's okay, somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
All right.
Somewhere in
Okay.
the
And then what, is this the right time for you to make the changes?
That's, yeah.
5s, okay? Yes, everybody kind of, all right. And then willingness to make those changes to happen. There's a whole thing that's gonna drive you over together. Everybody willing to do that, or are you kind of, not quite sure yet? As Tom says, pulling the sheet over your 5s, okay. And then this last, the significant parts of your business to, really talk about how you want to do that, and what the team's needs are. The team's needs have changed tremendously, which we're going to talk about a lot this morning. And how do you make that shift that you, at the beginning of the week, you set things up properly, and at the end of the week, you see where things are, but you also have fun in the middle of the week, because if you don't have fun in the middle of the week, it's kind of crazy. One of our friends who's going to be speaking in November with us, her name is Jada Willis, and she just wrote a book about Pantsless Nation, about how you do and how you work remotely. So she's
That was
got,
one of the first market statistics that Target reported,
yeah,
was the sale of tops went through the roof.
Right.
And the sale of pants decreased 60%.
right. You wear the same shorts
Okay.
14 days in a row. It doesn't make sense.
So I'm only at work from here up.
There you go.
All right.
That's,
So behind the screen, right? You have to have a significant why to drive the what and to drive everything else that goes on. Change.
So this is a fun quote that I found recently that really changes this whole thing of going, is really a loss, because you're now going from one thing to another. And you have to arrive at a new place. It's going to feel awkward, but you have to do that versus staying in the same old place. And there's 3 pieces to this whole thing. You have to prepare for change, get ready. What are you have to think of the steps you need to take. What action? Change is action. You have to take an action and change. And the last word, which I thought was kind of interesting, is how are you going to maintain that change? Once you've made a change, how are you going to keep it from going to the old place, but continuing new?
Now,
So-
and this generally along the line from you coming from inside your business to the outside, so it's internally driven change.
Mm-hmm.
There's another kind of change that's externally driven change.
Right.
You know, stuff that happens to you from the outside in. And hundreds of millions of small businesses have been dramatically affected in the last 6 months, okay? And I didn't want to be here, but now I'm here. So the change, the positive change has to come from inside and move out. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and this slide really resonates with me because over the last 6 months, I had to do some soul searching personally to figure out what change I wanted to have. And again, it's getting your head in the right place that once you make the decision, because I have to act, I'm going to have to do something.
There you go.
And then how do I prepare for the change and so that it's not stressful or craziness or, and what do you need to do? And do you envision what those steps would be? And so the transition for me was pretty okay. It wasn't, but I think I knew in my head what I had to do. And I knew I didn't want a lot of chaos. And so I methodically planned to make the transition easier. But if you're externally, it hits you and you're not ready.
You're not ready, but here again, internal change or external change, you actually get to the same point, which is to actually change. And that takes guts, that takes fortitude to decide what you want to do and then actually move forward with it. And that's what Lori Gottlieb is getting to here. You know, change is a process. You've got to make the decision. You've got to prepare to act. You've got to act, and then you have to sustain what you want to do. Okay?
Right on. Good.
All right, so I'm going to walk through these given. I'm going to walk through the first couple of these things. When I say given statement, it's given that this is what's going on. All right, so these are, it's another word for assumption. Right, but I don't want to assume anything right now. So, number one, working remotely will be a part of our future. Okay? I don't think, for me, working remotely has dramatically increased my productivity. I'm not in a car all the time, driving from one location to another. Secondly, diversity and inclusion, even prior to the pandemic, diversity and inclusion were building up in society, building up in organizations to a breakpoint. And now over the last 6 to 8 weeks, we've seen these demands become part of the fabric of day-to-day life in business and in communities. Diversity and inclusion. Multiple generations. My generation, the boomer generation, the last of us will turn 70 in 2033. That's 13 years from now. The newest generation on the street is Gen Alpha, who started being born in 2010. So the oldest of that generation is now 10 years old. When I retire, they'll be 23. The last of us retire, they'll be 23 years old. Until that time, Boomer, X, Y, Z, Alpha, at least 5 or 6 years of that are all going to be in the workforce at the same time. Because I'm not ready to leave. Alicia's not ready to leave. We're going to go kicking and screaming off into. Alicia's got to support her husband, all right? And my wife retired, so I have to support her now, all right? So we have all these things. Go ahead.
The multiple generation thing, so the inclusion is also including in the work area these 5 generations. And how are you going to, we're going to share that with you in a few minutes. Share, how are you going to talk to the other generations and talk to their personalities within the generation and also within the generation. So it's very interesting, and that's an inclusion thing too, not to not include someone because of their generation as well. And so it's as diverse as we talk about different nationalities, it's also within the different generations. And so because of that, change is a significant part of the business. And so change is change. So we want to talk about that. The last thing we want to talk about, not the last thing, but on this particular slide, is the whole thing about isolation. During this time, this whole feeling of isolation, I thought, well, for me, I'll call some friends. I did that. I called my friends in New Jersey. We had some calls on, and we looked at each other and all that kind of good stuff. And perceived. And there were other times when I felt downright, and Sarah knows me well, downright happy person, but and why? How come? So there's all this. So we have to include this thing with isolation. And anybody of any generation could be isolated. So we have to talk about how we're going to get people in rather than isolated.
But it's important that you understand isolation can be and is real, but also can just be perceived, that I'm out here by myself. Nobody else is having to deal with what I'm having to deal with. You know, and this becomes emotive, this is sharing, and this is digging a little deeper into the psyche, which I'm not qualified to explore, all right? So don't ask me to do any psychological analysis there. We'll ask you to do that, right? That's okay, all right? Okay.
And we're coaches, we don't do the psychological, we
Right.
just do the.
But before we leave these 5, do you have others that what would you throw up here? What are your givens?
givens? What, now is kind of, you're including in your realm of thinking.
About change.
Change.
Change is going to be consistent, all right? Change is going to be, change will go from being something that occurs every now and then to right now, with the rapidity of market and the movement of information and how quickly it moves through marketplaces and up and down demand streams and everything else. Change is going to be something, you used to have one person in the organization as a change agent, all right? They like change. Everybody in the organization is going to have to be a change agent now. They have to train into them the skill sets necessary to understand and manage change.
Flexibility and adaptability, if you're not flexible and adaptable, you may not survive this.
Well, but without an understanding of flexibility and adaptability, everybody wants a solid foundation to build on, and I'll change it a little bit at a time. The solid foundation that we have to build on now is an understanding of change and its dynamics, and rely on that to get us moving forward instead of where we've been. Okay? It becomes very critical. What are your givens? What else is there? Where do you see minefields right now? And here again, I used the new normal. I didn't mean to do that. But what are the minefields that you see in your business right now? Think forward.
Change is happening so quickly, you can't wait to make decisions. You may not have all the information to make a decision, so you have to make a decision today, and your decision today may be different than the one you make tomorrow.
As quickly as tomorrow.
You have to change, and you have to be okay with, okay, I'm gonna make this decision today, and we're gonna stick with this until we have to make the next decision to change. And those
Yep.
things come
So
over
it's
and over
a
and
cascading effect. It's on top of each other.
You can't.
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of related, I feel like shifting sands, that it's, even when you make a change, the situation changes as you're making the change. And it's,
You have to have that forward thinking and just trying to be 5 steps ahead. Where are we gonna be if we run out of ammo? And everybody knows there's an ammo shortage. Well, we're training people. If we don't have ammo, what are we gonna do? We can't train. So my next step is, okay, can we go virtual? Can we have it to where we can do laser and it gives the effect of, all of those are things that we're thinking of instead of just sitting here right now saying, what are we doing today? What are we gonna do tomorrow? I'm having to look even months ahead to where we're gonna be.
Well, I'm very proud of the organization that I work for right now, because on March the 9th, Friday, March the 6th, we shut down for spring break. A couple of days before that, everything started blowing up as far as COVID was concerned.
Yes.
Okay? March the 9th to the 13th, Monday through Friday, was supposed to be our spring break. On Tuesday, we announced that we're extending spring break by a week. All right? So between March the 9th and March the 16th, which was the next Friday, we opened back up, on March the 20th, we opened back up on the 23rd. In that 2-week period, we took everything that we were doing at Midlands Technical College and went virtual with it. Every class that we could, that did not require hands-on. Now, once it required hands-on, we couldn't do, right? But we went virtual with everything. If we decided that that would be a good thing to do at Midlands Technical College and did it the normal way, that could have taken between 5 and 10 years to do. But we had to do it. It was an organizational imperative. And that cascading, that was a minefield. Change was a minefield for us. Educational institutions, particularly higher educational institutions, are big ships with very small rudder. They do not like to change direction. And they don't do that very quickly either.
You have a thought? Priorities. Tell us more about that.
Yeah.
Well, not being able to take on everything at once at the same
Priorities have tendency to change during the day, right? Okay. Find yourself lay awake in bed at night thinking about what you're gonna be doing the next day.
I'm not.
Waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, going, you know,
I had one of those nights last night.
Yeah, I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and if I'm not careful, the brain will turn on, and I won't be able to go back to sleep. Okay? I just might as well get up. Okay?
I'll need a nap later today. Go ahead.
But the answers up here are what you have to translate into the future for your team and for the people that you work with. And you as business owners are the scribes and the translators of what that new future is going to be like. Okay? Now, generationally speaking, this was in there. This was in there. Okay, so you go ahead.
So let me tell you a little bit about this. One of the things that a bunch of years ago, I really got I was working at the university. I was a professor at University of South Carolina. And this whole thing about generations was very interesting to me, because now, again, I am a boomer, and I've got the millenniums and the Zs coming in, and how do I do that? So my big thing was, how do you talk to the other generations? So in your yellow folder, there's a piece that talks to you about this, and we won't go over this very much, but please spend some time with it. Every book you read has a different number of years that are within the generation, but very basically, it talks about that and what are the characteristics and the events that happened in those generations' lives, and also, what is those pieces, and then what are the words that those particular generations use that it comforts them, that's easy to talk about, and so forth. So before you talk to another generation, check this out if you like. And the different generations have some kind of buzzwords that are particular to them. And what I've included here too is, because of the coach that I am, there are certain techniques that you can use with each generation that they really love using. So I ask you this, for example, 30-second coaching is when you kind of walk by and say, Carrie, you really did a really great job on that report, and you keep on going, they're like, whoa. Tell me more about that. And then you get back to them and talk to them about those kind of things. So that type of thing. The nonverbals are always important. Cards, people are going back to giving cards and sending cards to one another, and thank yous. We just had this exercise with our roundtable group that we meet on Monday mornings virtually.
Did you get my card?
Yes, I did. I got it yesterday. Thank you very much. I need to get you a card to you. But anyway, and the other thing really huge is teaching back. If you can ask somebody from one generation to teach something to another generation, huge for both parties. They both learn, they retain it better. So these are just there's like 10 different techniques, but these are some popular ones. So this is a little gift for you. Please use it. Let me know how you use it.
Another way to frame the generational thing is, you're a supervisor, and you've got a work crew. And that work crew's got a boomer, a Generation X, a Generation Y, and a Generation Z employee working on it. You've got 4 people working for you, okay? Phone rings, call comes down from the boss, and we have to paint this wall today.
That's a good example.
Yeah, and you turn around to your work crew and said, okay, we got to paint the wall. Well, the boomer guy, who's painted walls before and has learned from painting walls, jumps up and he starts looking for the paint buckets and brushes
and the tape
and everything else, to get started. And so the supervisor says, well, this is a good start. That gets going. And the Generation X person says, come here. Why do you want to paint this wall? Okay. That's what they want to know. They want to know why. Okay, and you have to stop and explain. Generation Y essentially shoots you the bird and says, I don't do walls, okay? And that's below me, all right? I'm not, that's my career path doing a wall, so I'm not going to be doing that. And Generation Z whips out their cell phone and they Google painting a wall, and they'll be able to tell you everything you need to know about painting a wall without ever having done it themselves. And you walk away from this conversation going, I got a 1 in 4 chance that this wall is going to get painted today. And that's what you're dealing with the generation. So how do you deal with the guy who wants to jump up and get something done versus the guy who's never done it versus the guy who thinks it's below himself to do it versus the guy that really wants to be a part of the decision-making process, and why. So these are things that you have to deal with in generation.
Then we have another model, and I'm proud of myself. I just finished a book, and you're welcome to look at it later on, about reinventing yourself. And the model on this one is really 3 different pieces that are important. We're going to talk about so really it's basically, how are you going to, in your life, make sure you've got finances, good health, and life purpose. Why don't you start us out with the
Okay.
list?
Well, when I look at life purpose, for instance, it's in your book, right? But when you look at any one of these 3, let me start with finances. Okay, let me start there with finances. Okay, I was on a path to retire in 2006, and then the market fell out of the market. You remember that? That happened out on the West Coast too, didn't it? All right. Yeah. So everything, my 401ks became 200s and a half. Okay, and very quickly, and all of a sudden, I'm not doing that anymore. And my financial picture changed dramatically over a couple of month period. We have the same thing going on right now. Okay, you have people in your organization or yourself that need help understanding how to manage finances through this period. And they don't know how, and they're working themselves into a hole trying to figure it out on your time. Okay, because they're bringing this to work with them. They can't separate that worry from work. Okay?
The other piece, the health, all right.
Go ahead, but the lifetime income is something that everybody needs to look at, but as you go through the various stages of your life, that picture modifies a little bit. I was hoping we'd do some traveling. Nobody's doing any traveling now, all right? And I don't know when that's going to come about. We're talking about health.
Rachel Maxwell, she's actually a workout person here in the valley, in the Midlands, and these are her 3 formulas. Her basic is to exercise both mentally and physically. How you're going to do all those things. The whole thing by relaxing and sleeping, which was a lot, and of course this whole thing with good nutrition.
Yeah.
So
And bad finance affects your health.
Right.
Okay? Health affects your view of your life purpose.
Right.
The sweet spot you're looking at here is where they overlap is, how you put it all together. And that life purpose model is an exercise for you this morning.
So, and it's displayed here, but let me kind of go through it with you just really quickly. So this whole thing about purpose, we will talk about our purposes in life. And this is important for yourself and your team members to know that of each other. But what are these gifts that you bring? What are the things that you're good at doing? What are some of the things what is your passion? Things that you love. So it's what you're good at, what you love, and then also apparently talking a little bit about how all those 2 things are going to impact the people that you want to benefit. Who are the specific people that you want to benefit from your experiences and your passions and gifts? What are your values? What are the possibilities of working with different things and getting all those pieces together to be your purpose? And then then you've got this big funnel of all these things that you have thought about. How are you going to narrow that down and consider those gifts and passions and values? And then how are you going to visualize what's the upside and the downside of working that with people around you, and how you're going to do that. So it's a fun little exercise that you might want to try sometime, and looking at all that. So purpose is not just one thing, it's a combination of all those things.
Well, when I entered the workforce in 1973, my purpose in life was what my parents' purpose in life was. Work for one employer, 30 years, 35 years, retire, move to Florida, and enjoy yourself. And I got about that close to it, and then it all fell apart. Right? So you guys said these purposes changed. What you're good at, what you love to do, who's going to benefit from it, and how big is that benefit going to be? These are drivers. I mean, these are positive attributes you can spend some time offsetting the worries of the day. Okay.
So here's the how.
All right. One thing that I recommend that you do as we're going towards business in 2021 is you take a fresh look at your why on your business, because your why has possibly changed. And that why is the value proposition. I don't do business plans when I'm talking to people that want to start businesses. Business plan is something that you do later on. Business plan is something that you do when you need to borrow money from a bank. But a bank's not going to loan you money in the first 3 years of your existence, so you don't need a business plan. What you need is an understanding here, and this is a business model canvas. What's your value proposition? Not what you think it is. It's what do your customers recognize as your value. Okay? It's not, you have to take yourself out of it and go second person. And the only way you can figure this out is to identify who those customers are and then go talk to them. Who's that customer? The customer you've had in your business, how long have you been in business?
In practice, 35 years, in business, a year and a half.
Okay, well, in practice 35 years, let's say the last 5 years, you know, the people that came through your door might be coming through for a different reason then than they are now. Okay? Because there's this great big thing out there called emotional, psychological drain going on in this country right now. It's caused by pandemic, politics, and everything else that's all going on, and people are not handling that well. Okay? Value propositions change. Okay, so what's the value proposition of your business? I will drive you come and talk with me, we'll spend 75% of our time together talking about that, because everything else derives from that. The help that you need to do that, the supply chain that you need, is all there. But this business model is a living document. And these documents are, I have this 8.5 by 11, I have it 17 by 11, there's a big fold out. You know, you come see me, I'll give you one of these. It's mounted on particle board. But you have to look at that value proposition.
And
you have to re-examine it.
He has this electronically too. We just went through this with Kehoe Constructors, my husband's company, and it was huge, very eye-opening, and we're a multi-generational company, so that.
And particularly with them, what got them to where they are is not what they want to take them to where they want to be.
Right.
And that's a different value proposition that you have to understand. Okay.
So here's another piece of this whole piece. My 30 years of human resources, one of my favorite things is slow to hire, fast to fire. And what are the things that you're taking, the steps and methodical steps you're taking in order to bring somebody on board? And again, we can have this conversation separately, but basically, are you in fact doing really great background checks? And are you in fact have a process to the whole hiring things? Are you doing behavioral interviewing? So that's very important. But on the other hand, when you have something there's an issue, you need to get rid of that person pretty darn quickly. But you have to do the due diligence of having a process and making sure that you're doing it legally and constructively so that you don't hurt the other person as well. So you want to look at all those things. One of the other important things to think about when you're hiring is who are you going to get on your team. And a friend of ours, Alysia Stewart, I have a lot of military friends, ex-military friends, people who have a military background are great to hire. People who have been team leaders or been part of a pretty dynamic team, when you talk to them about it, are good people to hire. So you have to look at what are the holes you have in your team, how you're going to fill them with people who are team-oriented people as well. And that's another conversation we can have. The other piece is that I really like to look at, I think we still have this whole thing about telling people at the beginning, and I'm big about having job postings and a separate job description. You should never take your job description and put it as a job posting. It doesn't work very well because it's not giving the essence of the job to the community out there. But when they first start, also make sure they're very specifically, they have the competencies listed and your skill expectations and the definitions for each of those, and tell them what you expect them to do at 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And then I can even show you an example of a grid that has all of those things, and you track it with the person. They sign off on it 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days, so they know. And then that later on becomes part of their performance appraisal, but initially they have skills right smack in front of them that you can tell them this is what you're looking for.
And you and I talked about this, but there's still a lot of companies that use like a probationary hiring period.
But you know what, that's even too late to talk to them at 90 days. You need to talk to them at 30 days, and actually daily and weekly as well.
Yeah, the reason to not hold on to them is probably going to show up a lot sooner than that.
Oh yeah, at 30 days you should pretty know.
Okay. And then you look at
You're fine.
Okay.
HR issues.
So, okay, so things have changed a lot. So from the, people before in January, February, people saying, oh, people are just, the top performers are always looking for different jobs and we have to do a really better job of attracting people. And you were probably, when you're looking for a position too, you said, oh, what's attractive about this organization and so forth. And we're glad that you're here. But that's kind of switched a little bit to, again, employers are working, again, this whole thing about remote workplace. How am I going to make it happen? How am I going to make it effective? How are we going to then recruit and retain people? Because again, some people are going to find places that they want to work outside of where you're working. So how are you going to hang on to them? And this big thing, I love this program that I work with about the crazy cycle. The crazy cycle basically says if you don't take care of your people, give personal care, and you don't talk about that and how you're going to do that. And you also want the employees to give respect to their employer. And how are you going to make all that happen? What's the communication pattern? Otherwise, you go into what's called a crazy cycle.
And the critical thing to see here is that for managers and for us as business owners, it changed from what we can see to what we can't see. All right, I'm paying you 40 hours a week to work from home. I sit there probably 3 or 4 times a day. I'm going, is Alysia doing what she's supposed to be doing, or is she watching soap operas this afternoon? Or if she decided to go to the store, go out. So those are the things that occupy your mind. And impact on the vitality of the workforce. Is it getting done what it needs to do? I mean, are things moving properly? Okay, all right, thank you. I'm sitting behind you, can't see me. Okay, yes, ma'am.
You know what, Tom, I feel like, I think some employers have been pleasantly surprised that it's working so well remote. And I mean, it depends on the industry, it depends on the sector, but I know my sister in New Orleans works from home, and they've got, it's a big corporation, and they've got them at home, and she knows now she won't be back at least till January. They've already made that decision, and they've got a way in which they manage, and they make a call, and the staff convenes. But I think some employers were pleasantly surprised, and then some of the overhead costs have been diminished because the folks aren't at the office.
And usually supplies and all that other good
So
stuff.
one of the things that's changed generationally that affects us too is that my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked, all right, and that for my generation, that's the way it was. As you started up through Gen X, and especially into the millennials, you started seeing 2-income families, and that became entrenched for Gen Z and those families, and into Gen Alpha, and that's one of the major problems that are being faced right now by the school system is that one parent is being prevented from working in their normal job, and there's pop-up businesses all around that. All right, but here again, it's an impact of that vitality on the workforce. I can't come back to work. Somebody's got to be at home with my kids. So what do we do? Actually, okay.
So we're going to go through these really, really quickly because we have other things we want to make sure we do. The whole thing about the talent, we had a talent shortage before, we have it now. There's boomers who, I'm not quite sure what they were in. There's a lot of teachers out here, even in Lexington 1, where they're making some decisions about that type of thing. So we have to look at that. One of the things that Tom and I are looking at just on the side is we're looking to go into industry and say, look, before the boomers head out the door, 2 or 3 years ahead of time, let's come in and give them some coaching skills and have them learn to be coaches so they can start coaching the generations below them on what they know, their knowledge. I think as boomers, it's our job to pass that knowledge on to the other ones. And how can we set up this mentoring coaching program so that I can give all the skills that I have down to the generation so they can do what you're expecting us to do. So we're putting together.
Moved them from being causes of the change to being
Right.
facilitators of the change itself. Okay?
So this whole thing about retention risks, we have to think about that. And these are some things that have been on the books before. We talked about the diversity. What are the skill gaps? Sarah and I were just talking about that a little earlier. What are the gaps in skills that we have to make sure are tightened up? Quality is very important. And there's some really great tools. There's a tool called catalytic coaching, which helps you do that and get away from this old system and how you're going to actually do it so it's equitable depending on the business and what business is thriving and so forth. The whole thing about work life, the new word is integration rather than balance. And how are you going to make all that stuff happen? And again, with families with children, I don't know how you're doing it with, 2 days here and 3 days there, kids going to school. So that's a whole other thing, and again, the whole technology and social networking.
But all of these are HR issues. And these type of issues didn't traditionally appear in the HR department. The HR department where I worked and where you work was more tactical than it was strategic, right? Now, if I needed to increase the employment in the plant, I'd go to call the HR director and say, hire 20 people and start next month. Today, if you want to hire 20 people, you need to have started 6 months ago.
Right.
Right, so the timeline is changing, and they're having to deal with all these things. Well, in order to hire people today, I've got to pay them $2 an hour more than the people that are already working for me.
Easily.
How do you deal with technology and social networking? And the one thing I put right down in here, no secrets. There's no such thing as a secret anymore on networking, and because, if I know it, if my youngest daughter knows it, where does she go with it?
Internet.
Straight to the internet. Right? It's doing what Q is doing right now. All the way through. Okay, succession planning. Succession planning and that other one, go back to hiring and retention. That's what my 2 cents worth. I said I wouldn't spend 10 cents worrying about succession planning in your organization right now because your employees aren't going to be there long enough for you to plan their future. Right? Because that routine change out is what's going to drive the marketplace.
Okay, let's keep going here. So anyway, so the whole thing is the shift that we're taking quickly, the whole shift now is, one more, thank you. Okay, so we have to really provide this meaningful work. All generations want meaningful work. That's the biggest thing that we hear in different assessments. And how am I, as the employer, the boss, the leader, going to provide meaningful work? Especially remotely, I want to make sure I'm not just giving them tasks with something that has meaning and some meat to it. And then also, how am I going to promote their career development as well? So there's also some pieces to that to talk about.
One thing to remember though,
Yep.
my definition of this and my son's definition of that
Right.
might be 2 different things.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, meaningful has to be grilled over a grid of some type that says, is because it's like a value proposition. Alysia can't tell me the value proposition of her business. I would ask her customers to tell me the value proposition of her business. So my son's going to tell me what is meaningful work for him. Okay? And that's what that all is about.
So that's why within your team, you have to bring up this question. What is meaningful work? And then go from there. We have to keep on rolling
Yep.
here. So where do you get some help?
Call
Mr.
me.
Tom is one.
I'm one.
I'm the other one.
The Enterprise Campus. And several of you have been there, all right, to the Center for Entrepreneurial Success. I am paid by the college to provide assistance to students, faculty, staff, and the communities we serve for people that want to start or grow and sustain an existing business. And am I an expert? Absolutely not. But I can listen, and I can redirect, and I can channel, and if I don't know the answer, I can connect the dot for you probably somewhere and connect you up with the person that you need to get to. Okay?
And then there's the whole thing. The whole thing about working, what are some of the challenges you have? What is your perception versus the reality? Of doing that. So.
My perception is, am I getting $10 an hour worth of work out of somebody I'm paying $10 an hour if I can't see them? Okay? If they're at home. That's just me. That's just a perception I carry around.
That would be. Yeah.
Okay? And is that reality? You're saying you've got people that you talk to that say, I'm very pleased with what they've seen with remote work. I love the idea that I can't go anywhere anymore, so instead of driving 800 to 900 miles a month from Lexington, Richland, and Fairfield County, I'm in my office all the time. My productivity has soared at this point. Now I don't know how I can unwind that. I need to unwind it a little bit, but that's my personal issue.
On the second handout that we gave you, it talks about change. It talks about effort and change. So the grid that you have right here. Everybody, thank you.
Quadrant.
So open to that for just a second, if you wouldn't mind. And what that kind of helps you do, look at, just kind of pull one out here for a second, is it helps you kind of look at with everything we're talking about. And hopefully we can all hang in there just for a few more minutes on all this. In this whole thing, what are you going to do to create energy for yourself as well as for your priorities? And think about what are individual efforts that you want to do. So we just put a couple smatterings of things to do. This is for you to fill out. So what are you going to do for yourself, other than, of course, obviously avoid isolation? What are some things you want to do for yourself to go forward into this time period? And a lot of things we're looking for, we've done 2020 now, everybody, right? So we're looking for 2021. So what do you want to do to get you ready for that next period of time? The other piece of this is now, what do you want to do with your team? Obviously, you want to think of perhaps a business model, a canvas, which is great. You have to talk to your team about the minefields that are out there. You have to talk to your team also about retention, what's going to take, what helps them to get engaged, what helps them to retain and to be part of your particular team. So you have to ask those questions. The other piece is, what do you want to change? We talked about those 4 questions earlier, and then we talked about all these different issues. When you think about it, and if you want to just take a moment while we're doing this, what types of things do you want to change within your team? And that's where we can help you later on as well, to think about what you want to do. So the whole thing is energy and priorities, and the other pieces are changes. Anybody have anything they would put in any of these quadrants? What would you do for yourself, your own personal effort for yourself? What do you want to do differently for yourself? How about for your team and change? Now that you've been here a few months, what are some things that you're seeing that may need some change?
That's a loaded.
And that is a very loaded question. I know.
Especially with all employees in the room, okay?
No, but
I want to keep the employees happy.
there you go. So this whole thing about personal care is huge.
Need some more ammunition.
And doing that, and you have a very, very strong team, and they've been working very hard for the years before you came here, and they'll do the same thing for you going forward. So, but how do you keep that whole momentum going? So you might want to think about this, if not now, later on, about what you would add to those pieces as well. So we're going to keep on rolling here. We're kind of ask that question again about that whole piece as well. So we are also going to, we had to do a pivot ourselves, and in November now we're having all these fabulous folks here in the Midlands, everybody from Ron Harvey to Rachel to Alan Brown, who's with the Small Business Development Group, and so forth, and Jada. And we're going to all be talking about all these subjects and so much more. We're giving an assessment, we're doing all sorts of workshops with that, and we're doing some coaching pieces. So we'd love to have you join us for that as well. There's information in your package about that. And here's what we can help you with right now, actually. The crazy cycle is what I was mentioning to you before about that whole thing about the personal care and giving respect. And I myself don't do stand-up as much as I used to, so we're going to think about doing stand-up as well as doing some virtual programs of that. And Elevations is really near and dear to my heart. That's where you really ask your team members about what their perceptions of things are, you do a really great assessment, and you talk about what the team is, where you want it to go, and how you're going to launch it. It's really a great activity to get ready for 2021. So if you have 3 or 4 people, let's get together and do something like that. That'd be really fun. So the other thing is we'd like to have the opportunity to talk to you and to do some follow-up. Don't go any further than that.
Oh, no worries.
Go ahead. Thank you. So do some follow-up, to give us a call on that. In the last sheet, you've got it here for you to take away, but on the last sheet, there's an empty sheet that's paper clipped to the front of your folder. And it says, how to coach yourself, your team. Could you just take a moment and look at that? And those are all the different things that Tom does. He does a lot of things, and I do a lot of things. And how can we help you going forward to do those kind of things? So kind of, if you wouldn't mind, check off some pieces of that and let us know what that is. And again, if you could give us a little bit of feedback for today, that would be really helpful too. So take a moment to do that, please. And then we'll just give you a moment to do that, and then we'll ask your thoughts.
For 5 minutes.
You have 5 minutes? Okay. What are some things that as you're going through the list, what are some things that you see that intrigue you? That help you?
You know, it's funny, exit strategies, I was working with a business coach, and one of the
Mhm.
things we started talking about almost initially was exit strategies, and I'm like, I'm just beginning, why am I thinking about the exit plan? But that's an important part of that, you know,
How do you want to bring it, either pass it on to another group of people or individual? How do you want to know that, okay, well, you know what, I've gotten to so much wealth in this particular occupation, and I think I'm kind of ready to do the next thing, or go into consulting of some kind. What is that next step? And that's also the case when people are hired. You know, at what point will they look for another position? You know, they realize that. So always having an exit plan is
Well,
important.
Adrian came to us from the West Coast, doing what he was doing on the West Coast, doing what he's doing here.
Nice.
An exit strategy for a startup business, for somebody that was trying to roll out a medical product or something, was to get it out, get it to market, show the marketability of it, and then sell it. You know, get acquired, do something, you know, go public, that kind of stuff. The strategies associated with exiting are solidly based at the front door. As you think about how you want to get out of the business once you start it, because that will affect how you run your business. That will certainly affect how you run that business.
Otherwise, you just create a comfort business, and they may not be comfortable for too much longer if things actually change like they have. So people are facing that. I want to throw out a few things. I think going back to the whole idea of change, people are afraid of change, and what is it going to mean to their life, and how they're going to adapt to it. And we've got to get people encouraged to see that what's happening now in the world is the greatest time period in their life to see all the new opportunities that are out there, to in fact go down a new path that they might want to, or do something that they had thought of for years they wanted to do, especially with boomers right now. We've got this generation of people that have retired, have a nest egg, have a vision, want to accomplish something, and now's a great time to do it. The opportunities are amazing. I personally have been running my own business for 35 years with my wife, and we moved out here 2 years ago. So the idea of remote control, we've been doing this remote control for a number of years, and before that, my network of engineers was virtual all around the world. So once you get accustomed to doing this, this is the most efficient way you could ever run a business. I remember back when having to go from meeting to meeting to meeting, you know, and then the days ended, and I'm wondering, I didn't accomplish anything, I had 14 meetings. That's all done now. I mean, the way things have changed, it's so many more exciting things happening and people able to communicate at new levels. So yeah, the times are definitely changing, but for every single one of us, it's a whole new opportunity to, yes, reinvent yourself, and with new tools and connection methods, it's a great time to be alive.
One of the things that change drives is fear. Okay, fear is absolute. Fear is a barrier, and fear is a negative use of energy. Right, so you have to capture the fear. You have to capsule it. You have to minimize it, but you keep focused on the positive attributes of change, like you just said, Adrian. You know, because what's about to happen can far outweigh what's already happened. You know, but you have to manage it to be that way.
When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And that's been the history of this country, and we have seen amazing things happen in the toughest of times. Great companies starting, and people networking, teaming. And now there's more open innovation opportunities than ever. So on all levels, I've been asked this question now for the last few days. I'm coaching with this company back west. I'm asking the same questions. What are the biggest areas right now that we need to create and have new innovations for? We were asking that same question, and I'm actually creating that list, and I'm not the only one. If you go on LinkedIn and look around, It's amazing right now, the excitement that people are showing in the fact that, all right, we don't do it that way anymore. Well, that's the opening statement of how we are going to start doing things differently. And everything it's going to take to do that. And then there's subsets. You know, we talk about there's some technology, we know there's things with hardware, things with software, and things that are just software. And this company is trying to decide which angle they're going to look at. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, that applies to every different sector now. It's changing. Talk about health and the demographics. Now people, you know, as we get aged, our cognitive abilities, our physical abilities are diminishing. And so we need a whole new world of tools that's going to measure those things, help us with those things, help communicate those things. That is creating more jobs and opportunities in the next few years. Again, I've witnessed this product develop for 35 years, all the recessions there have been in that time period. And the number of people that get going with something new and make something happen, when things are the toughest, things really get going. So you're going to see a wave now we have never seen before in our lifetime because of what's just changed in society. You're going to see a wave of new innovation and new opportunities that's going to be like never before seen. So please, be positive.
We went from a less than 3% unemployment rate in the state of South Carolina to over 12% in a matter of like 60 days, right? And everybody's business was negatively affected. Most everybody's business was negative. And those that were negatively affected, if you're one of their competitors, they're trying to figure out right now, they've written off 2020, they're looking at 2021. They're saying right now to themselves, what do I have to do to gain market share? So if you're not planning an attack in early 2021, recognize that somebody else is, all right? And they're trying to figure out how they can do the job better, how they can drive a new value proposition that will pull customers away from you to them, and they're trying to figure all that stuff out. You better get in the game. If you don't have at least one eye on 2021 right now, for all practical purposes, I just did a calculation a minute ago, you are 97, you are 76 work days for all practical purposes away from 2021. All right? So it's closer than you think to where you want to get to.
So, thank you very much. Give us your feedback pages here. I have to tell you that one of the things I accomplished was to finish book number 2. So I've got the other ones to, so I've got 60 days to finish the other 2. But anyway, but those are some wonderful things that I would have, again, procrastinated on and done well. So I put on to all of you, do it, do these tough things. Thank you very much.
Yep.
What other questions do you have? We've got only another minute or 2. Any other questions? We'll be here for a little bit, so please do feel free to do that. And
Thank you all for being here.
all right, thank you all.